Peace is not the absence of conflict. In a remote monastery, nestled in the shadow of ancient mountains, lived a young disciple in search of peace. Every day he meditated, distancing himself from the noise of the world, hoping that one day tranquility would fill his heart. One day, the master approached him and said, "Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the way you walk through the fire without getting burned." Confused, the young disciple asked, "But how can I be at peace when everything around me is burning with problems and difficulties?" The master smiled and replied, "Come with me to the river." Together, they walked toward the crystal-clear water, where large and small stones lined the stream. "Look at the river," said the master. "Do you see how the stones do not stop the flow? The river moves, it adapts, it doesn't complain or resist. Is the river in conflict with the stones?" The disciple fell into deep reflection. The young man followed the master to the riverbank, watching the water flow calm, yet powerful. "Master," the disciple said, "the river can't remove the stones, but how does it not get angry or frustrated by the obstacles?" The master replied in a gentle voice, "Because it doesn't fight them." The river's wisdom lies in accepting what it encounters and continuing on its path, neither clinging to nor rejecting anything. In life, conflicts are like those stones. We can't remove them all, but we can choose how we respond. The disciple gazed at the water and felt a strange serenity begin to rise within him. "Peace is not a place without difficulties," the master continued, "but the calm we cultivate within while facing each challenge. Conflict is not the enemy, it is the teacher." For a moment, the wind whispered through the trees, and the disciple understood. True peace is born not from fleeing the storms, but from learning to dance with them. Days went by, and the young disciple began to notice that conflicts didn't disappear. They came one after another, like waves in the sea. Sometimes they were small irritations. Other times, storms that seemed ready to break his spirit. One day, he returned to the master, weary and heavy-hearted. "Master, how can I hold on to peace when everything inside me is in turmoil? When anger, fear, and sadness take over, I feel like peace slips away." The master looked at him with deep compassion and said, "Peace is not the absence of emotion, nor a silence without noise. It is a sacred space within you where you can witness your feelings without being swept away by them, like the sky that remains vast and serene, even when dark clouds pass through." The disciple took a deep breath and realized he didn't need to fight his emotions, but rather welcome them with love and awareness, without losing himself in them. "In conflict, you can find the path to peace," the master whispered, "as long as you remember. You are not the waves, but the ocean that holds them." The young disciple decided to put the master's words into practice. Instead of fighting his emotions, he began to observe them, to feel them without fear, without judgment. He noticed that anger burned like an intense fire, that fear made him shrink, and that sadness felt like a deep ocean trying to pull him under. But each time an emotion arose, instead of being carried away, he took a deep breath and remembered the teaching. You are not the waves, but the ocean that holds them. Over time, he realized that within that ocean, storms could rage, but the water was never destroyed. There was always a deeper space, an essential stillness that remained untouched, even in the fiercest storm. One afternoon, as they walked together through the forest, the disciple asked, "Master, does living in peace mean I must also accept pain and difficulty?" The master nodded slowly and replied, "Exactly. Peace is not a safe haven where nothing can hurt you. It is the strength of a spirit that embraces life in all its forms. When you reject pain or conflict, you become fragile and vulnerable because you're fighting the natural current of existence. But when you accept it, you become immune to fear and suffering. The disciple remained silent for a moment, then asked, "So how can I cultivate that deep peace in the midst of so much chaos?" The master looked at him with eyes full of wisdom and said, "Cultivate full presence in each moment. Observe without clinging or resisting. And remember, conflict is only a passing part of the great river of life. Don't fight the stones, flow with them. That is where true peace lives." And with that teaching, the young disciple understood that peace is not a distant destination, but a way of walking, an art learned through the ongoing dance with life itself. As the seasons passed, the disciple began to experience peace, not as a distant dream, but as a living, tangible reality. Not because his problems had disappeared, but because his heart had changed. One morning, while meditating at dawn, the master spoke to him once more. "Today I will teach you one final truth about peace. It is not only about how you act in the midst of conflict, but how you dwell within your own mind." The disciple furrowed his brow, intrigued. "What do you mean by that, master?" The master replied, "The mind is like a garden. If you plant seeds of fear, anger, or sorrow, thorny weeds will grow and cloud your vision. But if you cultivate seeds of acceptance, compassion, and presence, your garden will bloom with peace." Peace is not about denying conflict, he continued, but about choosing each day what to nurture within you, which words to water, and which thoughts to prune. In this way, even when storms rage outside, your garden remains strong and beautiful. The disciple sat in silence, feeling the depth of these words. He began to see that every thought he fed was a seed, one that could bring him either suffering or serenity. That afternoon, upon returning to the monastery, the disciple planted lotus seeds in his garden, symbols of purity rising from the mud. And he understood that, like the lotus, peace can emerge even from the murkiest waters, if we learn to tend to what lives within us. The days continued to pass, and the disciple discovered that peace was not a fixed state, but a constant dance between light and shadow within himself. There were moments when his inner garden bloomed in full splendor, and others when inner storms threatened to destroy everything. One night, in the stillness of the temple, the disciple asked the master, "Master, what should I do when the storm feels too strong and my garden is overrun with weeds?" The master, speaking gently, replied, "In those moments, don't try to rip out the weeds with force, and don't despair over the chaos. Instead, sit in silence and observe. Acknowledge the storm without judgment. Let it pass like the wind through the branches." Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to remain rooted while everything around you changes. Like a tree that doesn't fight the wind, but bends and returns to form, you too must learn to move with life. The disciple closed his eyes, feeling the truth of those words. He realized that peace was not a distant goal or a perfect state, but the loving acceptance of everything that is: the light, the shadow, the stillness, and the storm. In that moment, he knew peace had always been within him, patiently waiting to be recognized, even in the midst of noise and conflict. Time passed, and the disciple became a wise man. He looked back with gratitude on every stone, every storm, and every moment when peace had seemed out of reach. He had come to understand that life is a constant cycle of conflict and resolution, of light and shadow woven together to reveal the beauty of being. One afternoon, as they watched the sunset, the master said, "Now you know that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the full presence within it. It's not about avoiding the storm, but learning how to dance in the rain." The disciple nodded, his heart filled with calm. "Master, how can I share this peace with others who are still struggling with their storms?" The master smiled and replied, "Peace is not shared through words, but through the way you live your life. Be like the river, like the tree, like the lotus. Stay serene, even when the world around you is in chaos. In this way, without effort, peace will find them too." And the disciple understood that his path was not to escape conflict, but to become a beacon of stillness amid the noise, a silent invitation for others to discover their own inner ocean. And so, the disciple came to understand the deepest essence of peace. It is not a place to reach, nor the total absence of problems, but the courage to face each challenge with open eyes, without fear, without running. Peace is a lighthouse shining in the storm, a calm that rises from the heart when we stop fighting life and learn to flow with it. Every conflict, every difficulty, is an opportunity to grow, to know ourselves more deeply, to root ourselves in a serenity that no one can take away. Because true peace does not depend on circumstances. It depends on how we live through them. I invite you to remember this today. Don't search for peace outside. Find it within. Don't wait for the world to quiet down. Learn to dance with its storms. Because there, in the heart of the noise, true peace is always waiting. Thank you for joining me in this story. If it resonated with you, subscribe, tap the bell, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might be the light someone else needs to find their own path to peace.